Hello world, it's Alex the Dev. It's been a while since the last video, so today I am doing a devlog, a completely original idea I know. I plan on making these at the end of every project. This gives me a chance to reflect and sort of show off what I've been working on. It should also mean I don't disappear as much. Be sure to leave a comment letting me know what you think of this kind of content, or leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks. So today we are talking about Jelly Blob Slime Thingy. Of course this is a working title. I did mention it briefly in my last video and said this: I'm back to game dev, so don't expect another video for a while, at least until this game is finished. And it took a while. Why did it take so long? Let's take a look. The story begins on a cold winter night in early 2021. It was dark. It was cold. And I was playing around in Unity thinking of what to make next. Funny story actually, I was just showing my girlfriend what I do and how games are made, and what a better way to do that than to make a quick prototype. This is where Jumpy Cube Thingy was born. I made it in around an hour and thought nothing of it, posted it on my socials, and people seem to like it. Cool, at least I know what my next project is. However, I couldn't just keep it this simple, so I put it through the overcomplicator. Let me just fire this bad boy up. Bloop, 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 bloop. And after some time we had this. I added soft body physics and a background with a little bit more colour. This is where it evolved into Jelly Blob Slime Thingy. Then March came along and we turned it into a bit more of a game. I added the title, Jelly Toss, which has a much better ring to it. I then added some basic game stuff like levels. There's now a goal platform which you must reach to get to the next level. There's this cool bar at the top which will keep track of how close you are, and level variations, which at this point just change the distance between platforms as well as the platform height. I also added some cool fancy effects like the level complete text and the platforms rising from the smoke, which I just think looks kind of cool. You may have noticed that the scene itself changed too. That is because I had to optimise from pretty early on. I tested on a low-end Android phone. I figured if I can get it working on this, it will work for the majority of people. But with the jelly physics, the moving platforms, the fog and the background, it was overall pretty laggy, so I had to simplify things to make things run smoother. Now it's April. I didn't do much in April. I added some small features, put ads in the game, added an extra life, and I tried adding characters. At this point the idea was a little different. I wanted shapes, so obviously we have this little circular blob, but I wanted to try it in square, triangles and so on. And I tried it in a square and weird things happened. It just kept breaking, so I put a pin in that and went back to the drawing board. May and the beginning of June went pretty slow. I spent the majority of this month learning how to edit so I could put out my last video. This did mean development was put on pause. Briefly. But once the video was released, for the rest of June I really pulled my finger out. I completely redesigned level spawning, which took a while, to add more variation. I then added new obstacles, creating even more level types. This started with me originally wanting a moving platform. However, I actually started with the showstopper. Credit where it's due, this came from a friend on Twitter who mentioned obstacles and suggested moving barriers. I already had a few ideas of my own, but this gave me a few more to play around with. I then added the windmill. I don't think this one needs explaining. You can see what it does here. And last but not least, the red ball of death. Later renamed to the sweeper. Originally, this was to go back and forth across all the platforms, like you can see in this blueprint image. However, it had some issues. The platforms were different heights, meaning it would clip through taller platforms and not even reach the shorter ones. So instead, I made it loop around a single platform, which was just as fun. It worked. This brings us back to the moving platforms. There was a few small problems and a couple of issues that needed fixing, one of them being the common problem that most platform games face, which is getting the player to actually stick to the platform. Just because the platform moves doesn't mean the player will move with it. Instead, it would slide off to the side and die. Luckily enough, like I mentioned, this is a common problem, which means there was plenty of solutions to try. I also had another problem, but we will circle back to that one in a minute. In July, we started adding character. No, not shapes, forget about those. Instead, I gave the little blob a hat and some eyes, and voila. This opened up a world of customization options, which means we needed a menu for that. This will look better soon. This is the biggest character customization I'd ever worked on. In my previous games like Cluckin Around and Dan, you just unlocked set costumes. These was pre-made by me. This allows you to get a little bit more personal and customize the jelly to your liking. You could change the colour of your jelly. There was a few different ones to choose from, and there was a small selection of eyes and hats. Don't worry, there will be a lot more soon. At this point, I was getting very eager to just get the game out. What was once a small hour-long prototype has now taken months of work, but we are not quite there yet. For this next month I focused on customization. I added plenty of new hats and eyes, and it was time to start working on the UI, which is always a fun job. Yeah! Obviously the user interface should fit into the theme of the game, so I created this nice little jelly button which took a few attempts, and then created some icons and started filling in each screen. I also got this fancy jelly logo made up. Towards the end of the month I finally added some sounds to the game. Here's a fun developer secret: the jelly sound you can hear in Jelly Toss is a combination of bloody stabs and muddy footsteps. It's pretty hard to find a jelly splatting sound, but these sounds were more readily available and did the job perfectly. In September I set myself a deadline. Each month I wanted the game finished, and each month I would still have jobs on the to-do to-do list. I now had 1 month left to finish my game. I wanted it done by the end of October. With a deadline on the horizon, it was time to get back to work. I finished off the UI rather quickly and started working on trajectory prediction. This was a little bit of feature creep. If you don't know, feature creep, sometimes known as requirement creep or scope creep, is a tendency for product or product requirements to increase during development beyond those originally foreseen. In other words, adding stuff to the game that wasn't part of the original plan. Trajectory prediction definitely wasn't part of the original plan, however, I thought it was a good idea at the time, so I added it to the game. To get it working, there was a couple of solutions I found online. I won't go into too much detail, but one works using physics simulation. Basically, the game would run the main scene and a duplicate scene alongside it. The duplicate scene would run at high speeds and simulate whatever physics you are trying to predict, then send that information back to the main scene. The other solution involved a programmer's best friend, math. The math approach was a little harder to get right. It had a lot of variables to account for, but this generally performs better, so this is the one I went for. Eventually, after many tutorials and plenty of bug fixing, I had a working solution. The problem was, now it was a little too easy to play and just generally a little plain. This led me to change the controls entirely. I ripped out the old system and replaced it with touch and drag controls. Great, just what the game needed. More feature creep. Replacing such a core part of the game obviously took some time and naturally came with some bugs. Remember how I said I had some issues with the moving platforms that I would circle back to? Well, it was here that I realised the user interface for the controls, like the drag line and the trajectory line, didn't update when the platform moved. I almost didn't notice this one since the platform doesn't spawn a lot. A friendly reminder to always test everything. Alex the Devs, top tips. Finally, I added some collectibles, these sweet little jelly jars. This would later become the currency you use to buy your customization stuff. October, it's deadline month. I didn't actually get the game out on time, but it was uploaded to the stores by the end of the month. I class that as a win. In this month, I finished the game over screen, made it fancier with fancier effects. I added a share button with a custom image inspired by the one my friend James used in his game Flip Shapes. I added a rate and review pop-up in hopes of increasing ratings. I added the Alex the Dev splash screen. I added a simple tutorial to teach players how to be a jelly. I added new sounds for new stuff, collectibles, buttons and so on, added a couple of new hats again and eyes again, added tiny platforms, revamped the customization screen to make it easier to use and look better, added a store and premium items, fixed some bugs, created a build and uploaded and finished. Good month. By the start of November, it was out and everyone was competing for high scores, which I just loved to see. There was a few small updates fixing bugs, as there always is. For example, for some reason on older iOS devices, all the textures would appear bright white. This brings me back to the golden rule: always test everything. Alex the Devs, top tips. In these updates, I also added some new content. Every update came with some new eyes and hats to unlock, as well as a few new features. For example, there was now points for skipping platforms. This was suggested to me by several people after the game released. They said they shouldn't be missing out on points for taking them riskier jumps. Fair enough. I agreed and added some bonus points into the game. The next noteworthy update came in December. This was supposed to be the final update. I added daily rewards. You can now get your free daily dose of jelly and watch an ad to double that reward. I added some nice Christmas decorations. Well, I wrapped a few platforms in lights. 'Tis the season after all. And then I added some new eyes and relevant hats like the Santa hat or my favourite, the reindeer cap. Isn't it cute? Then there was the final update. I had to remove the Christmas decorations, right? In the end, I just had the game check what month it is, and if it's December, they appear. I also fixed a couple of extra bugs, because there's always bugs to fix, added some new hats and eyes, of course, and added one last final feature just to wrap the project up in a nice little bow. I got bored of looking at the same pink background for months, so I added two new ones. The background now slowly changes colour as you progress through the levels. It was a bit messy to get working, but it looks nice and it makes the screenshots from the stores look much better. And that's everything. That brings us to the jelly toss we have today. If you would like to see it in action, the links to download it will be at the top of the description. As a final thank you for making it this far and leaving a like, which you surely must have done by now. Here's a code to download the Iconic pack from the App Store and Google Play Store. With this, you can unlock some cool new eyes and remove the ads. Each code can only be used once, so if you do claim it, be a good jelly and let everybody know. Until next time, peace.